So I'm joined here with Gordon Henderson, Vice President of Collision Repair Solutions for AudaExplore. And we wanted to talk a little bit, Gordon. You guys recently announced a release about your predictive estimating or a predictive solution for collision repair estimating. Can you talk a little bit about the motivation behind that product and maybe what it took to get it ready for launch?
Sure. So, I mean, as we looked at the industry, and we hear from repairers that there's sort of a perfect storm brewing, and some will say that it's actually here already. On one front, you kind of have vehicle technology that's changing drastically and getting significantly more complex. So not just only the components that go in the vehicles, but also the construction methods that how they make the vehicles. So you got that kind of going on. And then you have kind of on another front, you have a concern in the industry where we're having trouble attracting new players to the industry, estimators, body techs, all that stuff. So when those two fronts kind of converge, kind of this perfect storm of a real problem in the industry that we've got to solve. As we looked at other industries and how they leverage data and analytics, they've been able to provide what we call decision support tools to help decision makers, especially if they're maybe newer and less experienced, to make the right decisions. And so we saw that a parallel for our industry, and that's how we embarked on the whole predictive and data analytics thing. And in terms of our investment, we've invested millions of dollars in the people and in the software tools to make to be able to make models that are statistically sound and will actually work. And not only that, over the last several decades, we've been basically collecting the data that you need in order to build those models, validate them, and vet them. So it's been pretty significant. We see that we're at a pivotal point right now, and we think the impact of the industry could be pretty big.
Yeah, so it's interesting to hear, you and I talked about this, and the fact that it's kind of designed or catered towards that lesser tenured, lesser experienced person, and to help them along and help them with some of those decisions. I think, just being honest, I think some of the initial impressions from the release was that the focus is really specifically about repairing panels cost less than replacing panels, and that this may be a tool that's going to almost second guess that professional expertise of somebody who's analyzing the vehicle on the spot. Is the intent to replace that decision-making factor by the professional, or is there something else?
No, not at all. I mean, we're focusing on repair versus replace initially because, and specifically, the most damaged body panels that we see in collision estimates, right? So we're trying to get as much bang for the buck as we can, at least in this initial set of models that we're building. And the intent here is not to eliminate a repair professional from the equation, right? We like to talk about more in terms of like a guided estimate where we're providing decision support, we're providing data and analytics that help the repair professional make the right decision. It doesn't trump them, it doesn't replace them, it basically complements their decision-making process. And it helps especially if you're in a situation where maybe you have a newer estimator, somebody that hasn't been doing this for 15 years or whatever, gives them additional support in making the right decision the first time.
Gotcha. So it's from as I understand it, it's based on data and the collection of that, but it may not be able to take into account some of the other lesser tangible items, like, for instance, the impact that replace may have on speeding up cycle time, which could reduce costs versus repairing could take longer, or the fact that if it's a hood, it could be damaged in a non-repairable area, and that's where that professional expertise still has to come into play, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, having a highly trained, skilled professional at the vehicle, actually touching the physical vehicle, we're not going to replace that. That is the guide. In fact, we used those types of people to validate our models. They looked at what the outputs of the models and said, yep, that was the right decision. Or no, it wasn't. Let's refine the model and get to the right decision.
So what is the information that the system is using to make its prediction or its guided response for the estimate preparer?
So behind the scenes, we've got essentially AudaExplore proprietary algorithm. So I got to be a little bit vague because it's kind of part of the secret sauce, but I'll tell you generally, we're looking at the facts of the loss. We're looking at specific characteristics of the vehicle. We're looking at where the vehicle's damaged. We're looking at the relationship between the parts and the labor and the cost of the parts, all kind of filter in to make that decision.
Okay. So right now you're focusing on repair, replace. You talked about expanding it into other areas. There are a lot of estimating areas that for collision repairers I think have been top priority for us for a number of years. Things like feather, prime, and block and other things that we really struggle with as an industry in capturing in a more automated sense in a way that we can get it on an estimate and not have it constantly challenged. And I know some of the arguments have been that there's research and development costs associated with that. So what made you all look at this before you looked at maybe some of those other items that have been on the table for a while?
Well, I think those other items are part of the equation for our development, and we focused on a set of models that we think we can really, number one, have high accuracy with, and the models will be reliable, right? So we're starting there. But the items that you mentioned are definitely on the roadmap, and I think will be part of our future models.
Okay, very good. So, so we'll look forward to those. Certainly, we've been looking forward to them for a while. So, tell me, I think you explained from a standpoint of who's kind of your target demographic for the use of this. From a shop owner perspective, who's the shop owner who you see benefiting the most from this?
Well, okay, so maybe a shop owner that has inconsistency among their estimators, or inexperienced estimators, or even if they have experienced estimators that maybe get sick or quit and go to the shop across the street, which happens. In short, I think all shops could benefit from this in one way or another. But or maybe shops that are looking at, maybe they're leaving money on the table with missed operations or missed parts on their estimates. We think that we can help them there, certainly. And I think ultimately, beyond just the shop, we think the vehicle owners will actually benefit from this the most. Because if you're preparing the right repair plan, for safe and proper repair, and we're not having, we're reducing our supplements, and we're not, we're getting it right the first time, it means we're getting better cycle time, better customer satisfaction. That ultimately is the ultimate benefit for us, for the vehicle owner.
Very good. Well, listen, we appreciate you taking the time to explain it. I'm sure we'll have a lot more conversations about it going forward as it develops. You guys have not done a full launch on it yet, correct?
Right. Well, it's in production in terms of our estimate check tool, but it's not built into what we call the guided estimate. It's kind of a future vision, and that's where we see it going.
Very good. Well, I look forward to future discussions. I'm sure we'll talk more, and thank you so much for the time and the support throughout the week.